Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting of the Columbia Development Authority Board to order. And the first thing we want to do is go around and do introductions for those of us in the room and those of you that are joining us via Zoom. I'm Kim Pusey, General Manager of the Port of Umatilla. Kelly, I'll go to you.
Jeff Winholtz, Morrow County Commissioner.
Debbie Pedro, Columbia Development Authority.
Emily Collins, CDA.
John Schaefer, Umatilla County.
Bob Blanc, Port of Umatilla, CDA alternate.
Joe Taylor, Port Morrow, CDA alternate. Dan Warren, Umatilla County. Ryan DeGroff, Business Oregon.
Thank you. First order of business on our, I'm sorry. Thank you, John. Everybody online, and Debbie, can you help us with that?
Yes, we have
Thank you.
Adam Huxell, we have David Blanc, we have Elizabeth Howard, Gib Evans, Jay Marlowe, JD Tubby, Jim Doherty, Jonathan Blatt, L. Pratt, MC Planning. I'm thinking that might be Tamara, and Patrick Collins. We do have 2 iPhones on there. If either one of you want to let us know who you are. It's probably Greg Smith is one.
Lisa Middlestar.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us however you can. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And we have in that 2 items. It's to approve the minutes of the CDA board and the executive session minutes for June 24th, 2024, a special meeting and executive session minutes for July the 11th. It's come to our attention that there is an issue with the executive session minutes, and I'm looking for a little guidance, either Greg or Elizabeth, as to how we address that. We can break up the motion and do everything except the executive session minutes until we go into executive session to address an issue that is it that it's not correct? Is that right, Commissioner?
Yeah, I just have a question on how it was written, what was written.
There's a question about how it's written, and I think it's probably best to address that separately. Elizabeth, Greg?
No, that's very good.
Yeah, I agree. That should be discussed in executive session. Then we can come out of executive session. You can vote on the minutes with corrections.
Okay, thank you. So the motion would be on this one to approve the minutes of the CDA board meeting, but to take the executive session minutes of 24 and July 11th off this motion. And then we're going to do them all together, or do you want them to do a separate, Debbie, all together?
I think it should be separate.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion on approving the minutes for the CDA board meeting of June 24th. And also the 11th, but not including the executive session minutes.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. Second item is to approve the budget statement, QuickBooks balance sheet and so forth of June 2024. Looking for a motion on that.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That carries. And then the Port of Morrow report on grant expenditures through June 2024. I don't understand what that is, Debbie.
Okay, so normally we have a report, but we do not have the report ready for this meeting today, so we will have it next month. So that will be taken off the agenda.
So that's taken off the agenda. All right. Okay, that takes us down to a discussion item, action item. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Went right past that. Public comment.
The QuickBooks and the thank you statement.
We did that one.
We did that. We did that. Public comment. And we had someone join us. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, my name is Teresa Rehak. I am a Boardman resident.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything either in this meeting or online for public comment?
So I have something I'd like to read, Mr. Chair, if that's all right.
That'd be great. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, so the Columbia Development Authority is a joint endeavor entered into by and between Umatilla County, Port of Umatilla, Morrow County, Port of Morrow, and the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation. In cooperation with numerous federal agencies and departments, that is 30 years in the making. The purpose of the CDA has always been to develop the former Umatilla Army Depot for the benefit of county residents and the tribes. Up until very recently, the members of the CDA worked together on this project and many, many others to do our best for our respective constituents. It has not always been an easy process or without its difficulties, but it has been forthright and out in the open. Transparency is a hallmark of good governance. Today, we're faced with a decision that seeks to undermine that transparency and the many years of progress we have made towards the development of the depot. Possibly even more concerning, however, is how the transfer of this land to CDA's primary asset is being done in a manner that undermines the longstanding trust and cooperation of our collective governing bodies. Since the March 26, 2024 vote that sought to transfer all economically developable land from the CDA to the ports of Umatilla and Morrow, there have been closed executive sessions, rushed votes, and assignments to executive staff of crucial decisions that should have been handled by the board in open meeting, all of which appear designed to keep Umatilla County and the public in the dark about how these vital decisions are being made. Furthermore, all attempts by Umatilla County to engage in a good faith efforts to attempt to reach consensus on these issues have gone unheeded. This rushed attempt to dispose of the CDA's primary assets without due consideration and due diligence by the board is at odds with the nature of the transparency and good governance. And a vote of simply reaffirm the March 26th vote will do nothing to correct those errors. However, it is not too late. I ask for the board to vote against any reformation to the March 26th vote, or at least table the motion until after we have an opportunity to discuss in earnest a thorough and responsible plan for the transfer of CDA property that does not leave the CDA undercapitalized for its future obligations. I also ask that the board vote in favor of entering voluntary mediation regarding the CDA property transfers to show the public our commitment to the consensus process and the desires to cooperate on this and all future projects on which we are sure to work together. By tabling a decision to reaffirm the March 26th vote, we can show the public our commitment to integrity and fidelity in the public process. In short, our commitment to a good government. By voting in favor of mediation, we can provide our members an opportunity to engage in open and honest dialogue in an attempt to seek consensus as required by our intergovernmental agreement. By slowing down this runaway train, we can get this process back on track. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else have comments that they would like to either state or read into the record while we're meeting here? All right, thank you so much. The next item, we move to a discussion item and action item or potential action item is the motion to reaffirm the CDA property transfer to the Port of Morrow and the Port of Umatilla by the CDA board on March 26, 2024. And at this time, what I'd like to do is see if we can't seek some consensus about what it would take for us to reaffirm that vote. And Commissioner Schaefer read a statement that I'm going to take as very appropriate for this portion of that. If you'd like to reiterate that in this context, or if you just concede with me that speaks to this, that'd just be awesome.
I would prefer that would speak to this. So yes, I appreciate that.
Okay. Commissioners, is there anything that would help you to come to a consensus so that we could reaffirm the vote? Is there something material that we could discuss today beyond the process that you have so eloquently stated here?
Well, I think if we just moved motion number 2 in front of motion number 1, I think that would would help me.
Okay. Anybody else have something that they'd like to offer so that we could come to a consensus to reaffirm the vote? Anything that would help you be more comfortable about that? And I'll get back to you on the other, switch the others around. I want to respond to you on that too. Anybody else have something?
Because I have a question about putting motions on agendas, and now we're questioning the order of them. I think, open motions are what we should ask for. I don't understand why we're having motions on the action item or an agenda. I think anyone is free to make a motion anytime they want, and I think this hampers our ability to do that, to move if we decide something different.
Okay,
That's not appropriate from the agenda, but I think it's a little odd that we're now locked down to putting motions on agendas.
okay.
Actually, that is in the IGA to do it that way.
All right. Well, thanks to both of you. I want to address, switch the order of these. On the motion to consider, this is number 2, and then I'll come back to number 1, just to be responsive to your suggestion there. On item number 2, the motion to consider the CDA board to enter into voluntary mediation on concerns about the CDA land distribution. It's just my opinion, I'm not an attorney, but I think that one is something that we'd be better served if the attorneys from our respective parties, given that we're in the midst of a lawsuit, address that. And I turned to Elizabeth to, kind of give me some guidance on this one, because I want to get to item number 2 if we can. I'm just not sure whether that's in an open session or a closed session. And I'm trying to be as respectful about transparency and, the public, that your constituents and the 5 elected officials for whom I serve are properly dealt with, and as well as the commissioners in Morrow County and commissioners at the Port of Morrow. So Elizabeth, can you help me a little bit on the question that Commissioner Schaefer had about moving to item number 2, and the question I hope I've articulated clearly enough for you to respond?
I might let Executive Director Smith weigh in on that first, as far as motions getting on the agenda in order. I can talk to what needs to be discussed in executive session versus an open session and the reasons for that, which we've shared with all the board members previously. But I can share that as well if we need to.
Okay, thanks. Greg, help us out here if you can.
Yeah, sure. First of all, Mr. Chair, I want to acknowledge the comments of Mrs. Doherty. I think they're very, very valid, in that board members at any point in time should be able to make a motion. With that said, as director, I've done everything I can to be accommodating to each of the 5 board members. And as each of the 5 board members have requested consideration of a motion, I tried to allow for that and to place it on the agenda.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment about where we're at on this? I'd like to state for the record that the Port of Umatilla drafted a resolution on the 2nd of November to see if we couldn't build consensus, 2nd of November of 2023. And I think if my recollection is correct, Greg, you prepared a resolution for our meeting of December the 12th. So we have been trying to come to consensus, but we just have fundamental differences, it seems like, about the disposition of the property, the roles of the 2 entities, particularly on the east side of the depot. The same constituents to your comment, Commissioner Schaefer, that are being served as the citizens of Umatilla County are the citizens of the Port of Umatilla as well. And so they're being represented by you and your other fellow commissioners. And the very same people are being represented by the Port of Umatilla Commission. And so there's an argument to be made that the citizens are being served, whether the land is distributed the way, you know, the vote of March 26 went or otherwise. So I just state that. JD, is there something that could take place today or that you'd like to state that could help us get to a consensus to reaffirm the vote of March 26th? And you have stated previously your views and opinions and so forth, but if there's anything that you'd like to say today that would help us get to consensus, that's kind of what I'm looking for. That's not kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that input today, if you could, if you'd offer that.
Certainly, and I want to reiterate what Commissioner Schaefer had stated about about the intents and purposes of the CDA, the 30-year relationships that have been built with the CDA, and my concern on it is you talk about attempting to reach consensus in the last 8 months or so. My concerns about that, though, is that instead of continuing to work through that consensus, or at least a facilitated consensus, 3 members of the CDA met in secret and then decided to collude on a vote to actually distribute the lands. That seems to have happened. And that's what my concern is about the distribution of the lands, is that because the consensus wasn't being able to go through either a facilitated mediation or wasn't into the best interest of individuals, then also 3 members started masterminding to get lands distributed. I also take issue with the notion that the CDA the ports are represented. They are elected members of the communities, but they're also serving a very specific business interest. Whereas where the Umatilla County and the Port of Morrow County were specifically put on there for government interactions and relationships, and so they have different obligations to their citizenry than the ports commissioners do. They have very, very different roles and very, very different obligations. So the fact that you think that you're still representing the people of Umatilla County by having the ports manage this is not exactly forthright. I completely disagree with that. So there's a different role there. I also have a separate issue with the original March 26th motion, is that the inclusion of the C2IR's distribution of lands of the 4,019 acres was included in there when that was agreed upon a separate IGA. And so the purpose, and it's come to my attention, the purpose of including the 4,019 acres in there was to kind of ameliorate or somehow kind of make the tribes feel like we've received something too, so we have nothing to argue about or nothing to disagree about, when in fact those 4,019 acres was taken over at a cost to us in order to be able to manage those lands as a favor to the CDA, in order to be able to manage those lands for wildlife habitat. And we were purposely then cut out of the economic opportunities that the rest of now just the ports are now enjoying. And furthermore, all 5 entities have put in a lot of money into these organizations, and then just a vote to pass this land off to 2 individuals that are not necessarily taking on. Are we going to get reimbursed for all that money that we put in, and the time and the effort and the blood and toil that we put into it for the last 30 years? Or are we just being voted out of it? So there is nothing right now other than going to a 30 to 45 day mediation that is going to get me to a consensus to reaffirm the vote from March 26th.
All right, thank you, JD. Let's see, I'm not seeing any hands or interest in the room. Anybody online that would like to comment about anything that could be done to get us towards a consensus before we move forward on this motion to reaffirm the vote of March 26th?
Mr. Chair, I'd just ask one more time that we just table that motion and go straight to motion number 2.
Okay, thank you. Any thoughts about that?
I would second that if that was a motion.
That's not a motion, that was a comment, but thank you. So everybody had an opportunity to speak that would like to. Okay, if there's nothing else anyone has, I would look for a motion to reaffirm the CDA property transfer to the Port of Morrow and the Port of Umatilla by the CDA board on March 26, 2024.
I would make that motion. Would you like me to read what I have?
I think it's better if you do. Yeah.
I move that the Columbia Development Authority reaffirms the motion that the CDA board approved on March 26, 24 as follows. The Columbia Development Authority is a local reuse authority as established under the base realignment and closure program. The Army transferred this property to the CDA through an economic development conveyance. The purpose of this conveyance is to generate economic development. The Port of Morrow and the Port of Umatilla are charged with industrial development in each respective county. With that in mind, I make the motion that the Columbia Development Authority transfers tracts of property for the purposes as follows. To the CTR for wildlife habitat, 4,019 acres of tract 1 zoned wildlife habitat. To the Port of Morrow for economic development, tract A and tract B zoned port industrial, approximately 1,900 acres, and tract C zoned EFU, approximately 634 acres. To the Port of Umatilla for economic development, tract F, G, tract G2, tract H, zoned depot industrial, approximately 1,278 acres, and the portion of the wildlife habitat in the Umatilla County not going to the CTR, approximately 1,257 acres. I further propose that Greg Smith works with each partner to complete a property transfer agreement acceptable by each port and the CDA based in part or in whole on the proposed depot property transition program document as drafted. This action does not rescind the previous motion and approval by the CDA board at the March 26, 24 meeting.
And I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded, and I think everyone has heard the motion and the second. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Okay.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Thanks. Motion carries. Discussion and action item number 2 is the one that I have the question about. And it's because the issue of moving into voluntary mediation is cumbersome with respect to where we are in the litigation. And I need to turn to you, Elizabeth, on this, if you would, please. And if you want to defer to Greg, that's fine. I just need some guidance here on that one.
Director Smith, do you want to jump in first, or would you like me to?
Boy, I'd appreciate if you take this one.
Okay, no problem. Again, I think if we wanted to move into executive session before we had discussion on this motion, that would be fine. I think the key is this motion is the key is to not share attorney-client privileged information. Information that was discussed during executive sessions cannot be talked about during open session. So there can be discussion about the motion, but there cannot be discussion about any privileged communication that was shared in executive session without waiving attorney-client privilege. So Chair, I'll just leave it to your discretion how you want to proceed.
Okay, let's see. What I would prefer to do, just for the convenience of those who would be asked to leave because of the executive session, is that we continue with old business and then we adjourn to the executive session. So the old business item number 1, Greg, I'm going to turn to you for the update.
Perfect. So just very, very quickly, gang, I would just share with the board and with the public that the Columbia Development Authority and C2IR continue to work together with Umatilla County's surveying department on the property line adjustment application that's currently under review. I would share with the board that Umatilla County has been very, very professional in working with us, and as staff, we greatly appreciate it.
All right. Before we adjourn to the executive session, I want to thank everyone for the conversation we had on the first motion, and I want to pledge to the Umatilla County Commissioners, specifically to you, Commissioner Schaefer, that I'd like to work with you some way when we get on the other side of whatever this litigation or mediation ends up being. I feel like we're better off as partners than we are as adversaries, and I would like to be able to see if we can get that done. And I understand if you know, we still have a lot to work through, but I appreciate your efforts and your service to your constituents. So
Thank you.
just wanted to say that. If it's okay now, Greg, I'm gonna have you read the, or Debbie read the, section or ORS 192660, so that we can move forward, and we'll be as expeditious as we can for those of you that are gonna exit, and just wait briefly out here in the foyer, if you don't mind, and then we'll get you back in here as soon as we can. So Debbie, if you would, please.
Okay,
Really quick, Mr. Chair, before we do that, I do want to let the public know that we are going to be considering an executive session, a real estate lease agreement. And there is a probability of a vote being requested after executive session. So I want to make sure the public is aware of that.
Thank you, Greg. Debbie,
okay. The CDA may hold an executive session meeting for the permissible reasons stated below under ORS 192.6602. Representatives of the news media and designated staff and other persons shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience will be asked to leave the room, or the CDA board may adjourn to another meeting room. The public visual Zoom meeting link will be closed during the executive session as permissible. Executive session meetings are not subject to HB 2560. Representatives of the news are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision will be made in the executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to the open meeting and Zoom link. A, for the purpose of consideration of deliberations with the CDA executive director and other staff members who have been designated by the CDA to negotiate transactions related to the sale or lease of real property. That is ORS 192.6602E. B, for the purpose of consultation with the council concerning legal rights and duties of the public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. And that is ORS 192.6602H. So at this time, we will move everybody into a waiting room that's online, and we'll come back to you as soon as we're done.
And
Right.
I don't think so.
Well, I think she had told, there you go. That's probably with you reinvesting.
Well, I think she came around because I put her pretty hard to get it. Thank you. But the practicality is we'll be reinvested. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Dan's here, that.
all right.
Can we do, I guess, take a 5-minute break? Pause on that.
Looks, that's fine with me.
If we could.
Yeah.
5-minute break. Okay. All right, looks like we're all back in the room and we will reconvene this meeting, and we have two decisions to make. The first, I want to take you back up to our initial action items about approving the executive session minutes of June 24 and July 11th, and we got that clarification. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the executive session minutes of July 24 and June 24 and July 11th.
I'll make that motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the executive session minutes of June 24 and July 11th. Those in
Here,
favor?
I'm gonna abstain on this vote.
Okay. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have one abstention. Any opposition? Motion carries. Thank you. And then, if I'm not mistaken, we have a motion from the executive session to approve, let's see. I'm scrolling here.
Can I help you, Mr. Chair?
Please, I'd take some help. Thank you.
And I'm assuming we're referring to the ground lease agreement.
I am, and I'm looking for it on here and I can't find it. That's so. Oh, I just can't find it on the agenda. That's all.
It's
So,
action item down below.
action item, on case number, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we would like to take action on the ground lease agreement that has been discussed with Idaho Power and the CDA. Anybody want to make that motion?
I would make the motion to approve having staff move forward with the land lease agreement with Idaho Power.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded that we direct staff to move forward with the ground lease agreement. Those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
One nay. Motion carries.
Thank you. So, Mr.
Did we
Chair,
hear
as a
from
review,
I didn't hear from JD. JD, did you vote affirmatively or negatively on that?
I voted affirmatively. Sorry, I was on mute
Okay.
still.
All right, didn't hear you. Thank you. And Greg, I'll defer back to you. What did you say?
I was going to share, Mr. Chair, members of the authority. I will report back to you on the agreement. Should there be a need for any change, it will come before the board prior to any final improvements or signature.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order while we're here, not together?
Was there any action taken on the other issue?
The motion. JD's motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for the reminder. So we're back up to discussion item, action item number 2. This is a motion of consideration for the CDA board to enter into voluntary mediation on concerns about CDA land distribution. And so I'd look forward or look to a motion to enter into.
Would you like me to read them?
Yeah, if you would, please. Yes.
I move the 5 CDA entities to enter into voluntary mediation to address the ongoing disputes over distribution of lands under the March 26, 2024 motion. This mediation will include the following: hitting pause on litigation and the property conveyances except for land use for up to 45 days, enter into facilitated mediation in 30 to 45 days, with the ability to extend this time if making progress on mediation requested by all parties. And third, restart and expedite litigation if no resolution via mediation.
Thank you.
Second that motion.
So it's been moved and seconded. You heard the motion and the second. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed,
Nay.
Nay.
nay. The motion does not carry. All right, so Anything else for the good of the order, Greg, or otherwise?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and your participation and so forth. And until we meet next time, safe travels. Meeting's adjourned.